Given the rich, long history of Greece and the abundance of interest in classical Western civilizations, one might expect that a ubiquity of unbroken antiquities, rich archaeological sites, and objective historical records exist today. However, the lack of classical Greek archaeological evidence after the invasions by the Persians, Romans, and Ottomans allows for a significant ambiguity in historical speculation. This means that historical records by Herodotus, Plutarch, and Pausanias become incredibly important for contextualizing monuments and ruins we find, to the point where over-reliance to a single source leads to modern misconceptions of ancient Greek civilization due to author motives or subjectivity. Specifically, in this episode of Greece, Escape from the Past, we examine how even a single example of ancient propaganda in Greece, namely Lycurgus' rules, and celebrations of the Battle of Thermopylae impact the Greece of today. For glorifications of the Battle of Thermopylae, the story of the 300 Spartans at the Hot Gates, many cultural, political, and ideological consequences follow, specifically the effects on tourism and the emergence of neo-Nazi groups that are both especially relevant today. For these reasons, it is impossible for Greece to truly escape the shadow of its past. This is the story of the Spartan Mirage, and more importantly, and perhaps even more compellingly, its consequences.
First, we consider the modern cultural implications of the lack of information regarding the practices of the ancient Spartans. Since our only knowledge of Spartan customs comes from Xenophon and Plutarch, the proliferation of Spartan myth as fact only swells over time. For example, in Chapter 1 of Spartan Society, a treatise attributed to Xenophon, Xenophon justifies the fact that the Spartans encouraged polyandry because the practice does not split the family inheritance. However, this is in direct opposition to a further description by Xenophon of public property in Chapter 7, in which Lycurgus prescribes uniform provisions for all Spartan citizens. By admitting that polyandry is not only permitted but also encouraged, Xenophon contradicts his claim that Lycurgus instituted public property uniformly among the Spartan population. Also, in Chapter 5, Xenophon describes how state-sanctioned hunting expeditions provided Spartan individuals the ability to contribute to the overall Spartan public. However, he also mentions how occasionally the rich individuals supply food for a change. Again, a mention of wealth, when Chapter 7 so clearly contradicts this claim with the statement, Lycurgus banned all free men from the pursuit of wealth. These types of inconsistencies and the only description we have of the Spartan practices poke holes in the Spartan mirage that the Spartans constructed to rival the prevailing Athenian narrative circulating at the time. From Xenophon's description, we see that we cannot take this information at face value. It becomes difficult to determine fact from fiction. Specifically, the effect in popular culture in the modern era perhaps is most apparent with the Zack Snyder film 300, a fictionalization of the Battle of Thermopylae, where the Spartan king Leonidas led 299 other Spartan soldiers to stave off the second Persian invasion of Greece. Although Snyder takes many artistic and historic liberties in portraying the battle and surrounding context, such as the barbaric and monstrous look of the Persians, the final spear throw from Leonidas piercing the skin of King Xerxes, and of course the infamous exclamation, "This is Sparta," before Leonidas plunged a Persian messenger into a deep well, which actually happened according to Herodotus, just before the first Persian invasion, just without the theatrics. These are just a few of the most egregious examples. However, Snyder clearly means to convey some sort of historical realism for the sake of suspension of disbelief. For example, the Spartans still sport Corinthian helmets, wear red cloaks, and hold shields emblazoned with a capital lambda for Laconia, and consult the Oracle of Delphi, receiving a prophecy predicting either the demise of Sparta or its king, according to Herodotus. Scenes such as the inhalation of noxious fumes by the Pythia only exacerbate modern misconceptions of ancient Greek customs, especially since ethylene and benzene, the compounds we believe to fit Plutarch's description of the sweet-smelling odors, prove to be both naturally impossible in high doses and historically improbable, since we find no records of frequent priestess sickness and death. Since we lack significant historical records and those we do possess double as ancient propaganda, namely Xenophon's description of Lycurgus' rules, Greece today cannot escape the myths and misconceptions of its ancient past because the popular media and culture of today will always take Lycurgus' rules as truths due to information starvation. Descriptions in Xenophon's passage of boys recruited for military training at young ages, unfit offspring thrown into chasms, or the existence of uniform public property alongside class differences contain hints of truth and dashes of lies, but mostly large splotches of statements classified somewhere in between. Even now, as one walks around Athens, "This is Sparta" shirts, Spartan armor, and Leonidas depictions litter the stores. 13 years after the release of the film, and about 2,500 years after the Battle of Thermopylae, the tourism and merchandise associated with Leonidas and the Spartans still sells well. In a 2007 New York Times interview with Petros Doukas, then Greece's deputy finance minister, even Doukas acknowledged the film's impact on Greece's tourism, saying, "The movie's lesson is fight for your country even if it's a losing battle, and have enough swords and hotel rooms on hand for tourists." While 300 has been a boon for Greek tourism in the last decade or so, reminders of the Battle of Thermopylae and the story of the Spartans have not always been so beneficial to Greece's history, especially in regards to the emergent ideologies in the last half of the 20th century. Though Philhellenes like Byron harken back to Thermopylae to catalyze Greek independence through foreign aid, the story of the 300 empowers more sinister modern political elements as well.
Laconophilia is the love or admiration for ancient Sparta. It was proliferated by this man, Karl Ottfried Müller, a German scholar who linked Spartans to their ancestors, the Dorians. In his 1824 book, Die Dorier, Müller portrayed the Dorians as a noble and heroic race who migrated into Greece from the north and linked their heritage to the Myrmidons and their leader, Achilles. Müller's writings influenced Nordicism, the theory of a superior Northern European master race. These theories were repeated by Hans F. K. Gunther and Alfred Rosenberg, two Nazi race theorists. In 1928, Hitler praised the Spartans and recommended Germany should imitate them by limiting the number allowed to live. He claimed that the subjugation of 350,000 helots by only 6,000 Spartans was due to their racial supremacy. Sparta was the first racialist state. Hitler founded in Sparta a society that executed eugenic selection, the military education of the youth, the preservation of the small ruling warrior class of best racial quality, and self-sacrifice for one's country. For example, the Germans' law for the prevention of hereditarily diseased offspring required physicians to register every case of hereditary illness known to them, with few exceptions. Forced sterilization was practiced to preserve good genetics. The German youth education system was likewise revamped and drew an ideologic and genetic connection between Dorian Sparta and Nordic German history. The final solution is also indirectly an extreme extension of the Spartans' ideology in order to justify the genocide of Jews. In 1941, Axis occupation of Greece began when Germany invaded to assist Italy, its ally. Greece was left in ruins. 80% of industry was destroyed, 28% of infrastructure, 90% of roads, railways, and bridges, and 25% of Greece's natural resources were laid waste. 40,000 Athenians died of starvation, tens of thousands from Axis reprisals, while 63,000 to 66,000 Jews died all over Greece. The Thessaloniki Jewish Museum was built in commemoration of the 50,000 Jews who were deported to Auschwitz from Thessaloniki. Few returned. Nazi occupation, unfortunately, was assisted with some Greek collaboration, whether due to survival or for war spoils. Ideological polarization from World War II and the following Civil War barred modern-day historians from conducting research until the last 15 years, when more information was released to the public. In turn, this gave rise to academic conferences and research that have opened new exciting questions to the international academia community. Yet neo-Nazism remains an issue in even modern-day Greece. Krypteia is one such group that kills, burns, hits, and tortures immigrants, mainly Muslims. Their name, Krypteia, is literally derived from the name of a group of ancient Spartan vigilantes notorious for attacking slaves. The neo-Nazi group is believed to stem from the Golden Dawn political party in Greece. Other neo-Nazi groups also proliferate hate crimes and race-based violence, targeting migrant laborers in areas like Piraeus. Between 2017 and 2018, the total number of hate crimes grew from 102 to 117, an almost 15% increase, while the number of attacks targeting refugees and migrants more than doubled.
Counter-terrorism officers in Greece launched an operation in the early hours of Tuesday to arrest suspected members of a far-right extremist group calling itself Combat 18 Hellas.
The Golden Dawn political party is considered the root of these neo-Nazi groups. The party comprises 18 seats in the Greek parliament. Although a modern-day organization, their political positions can be tracked through an extreme interpretation of the Battle of Thermopylae. Every year, Golden Dawn members gather around a bronze statue of Leonidas at the famed site and share the national anthem or far-right slogans as a means to preach nationalism. The Battle of Thermopylae reverberates millennia later, even in modern-day Greece's political climate. Golden Dawn members perceive the famed battle as Leonidas and his companions facing off against Persian invaders in an act of self-sacrifice for nationwide liberty. They gloss over, however, that the ancient Greeks fought amongst each other just as much as they fought against foreigners. Yet the battle serves as a powerful symbol which drives Golden Dawn's anti-immigration political beliefs. In response, the far-left political party, Syriza, is attempting to downplay the potential threats extremist views might perceive from primary source documents. In 2016, the Minister of Education announced that certain excerpts from Herodotus and Thucydides would be excluded from the high school curriculum on the basis that such texts promote the ideology of anti-immigration. Such texts would be replaced with others that would be more inclusive of immigrant children in school. The ban was overturned in 2017, but government agendas on the high school curriculum and texts used still continue. Government activity over public education is a strong indicator of the weaponization of ancient texts for the usage of political agendas. These bans signal a growing conflict between the far-left Syriza and the far-right Golden Dawn.
In the article, How Poverty Changes Your Mindset, UChicago Booth Journal contributor Alice Walton discusses a correlation between poverty and measure of intelligence. Specifically, poverty-induced strain can account for a 13-point deduction in IQ. History has demonstrated that the exploitation of the economically depressed masses can result in political and eventual authoritative gain. Perhaps the most prominent example is pre-Nazi Germany. Post-economic crisis in 1929, unemployment skyrocketed, production tanked, and the Nazis' exploitation of the country's angst propelled them from a relatively insignificant local party to one with all the power to wage international warfare and systematically attempt to eradicate an entire marginalized group of people. Now, modern Greece demonstrates some parallels to Germany after 1929. Similar to Germany at the time, Greece's economy had shrunk considerably post-economic crisis. The austerity measures implemented by the Troika resemble similar policies under the Brüning government. Drastic government spending cuts, pension cuts, and increases in indirect taxation. 21.5% of Greece's total population remains unemployed, while 43.6% of Greece's youth are jobless. As poverty spreads, more Greeks seem to be losing faith in capitalism, as even the suicide rate explodes. This post-crisis economic climate created the perfect opportunity for the Golden Dawn political party to promote anti-immigration policies, as well as for neo-Nazi groups like the Krypteia to proliferate race-based violence. Walton's research provides an extreme perspective through which to view Greece's modern socio-political climate and future. This is not to say that Greece will become a fascist nation, but race-based violence remains something to watch for as economic angst unfurls over the next few years. While optimists can wax poetic about the modern cultural benefits of glorifying specific battles in Greece's history, in terms of increased tourism and general interest in ancient Greek history, the fact that Greece cannot completely escape its historically misunderstood past leads to some dire consequences as well. As long as the sun shines and Greece ventures headfirst towards a brighter future, its shadow will always follow, for better or for worse.